Hello viewers, good evening. The evening of life and evening in the day, would they be similar? If you looked up into the sky, there are these birds, they're heading towards a northwesterly direction, and there are a few clouds in the sky, and many in our midst who are old and who are engaged with such professions where there is a risk to life, have in their minds and in the minds of the members of the family the moot question whether they will be able to live on, and how long will this present pandemic continue for? How long will the lockdown remain? What will happen to the economy? How will we be able to survive this fresh set of circumstances that have come unto us from absolutely nowhere? Now, all our solutions cannot be brought out from our logistics and from our research laboratories, from our supermarkets or from our military. There has to be some sacred space where we can visit at times and bring out a solution to the mental agony that we all are suffering en masse today. In my last episode, I was talking about the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and I had concluded my talk with the shloka in which Krishna is telling Arjuna that the false never sustains and the truth never ceases to be. And of these two, the seers or the Munis have been able to configure the difference. Na sate vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata, ubhayoropi drishta, where anayos tattva darshavi. And today I will dive into a very beautiful para by Arjuna in the form of a question asked to Krishna. And Arjuna, with all the naivety of the mighty warrior, with a simplistic mindset that he has, asks the question, "Oh Krishna, how does one who is situated with that absolute self, that unchanging paradigm, different from the changing material world, how does that person who settled in that self, in that state of permanency, how does he talk? What does he look like? How does he walk? How does he stop? And what does he think? Sthit pragyasya ka bhasha samadhi athyash keshav sthitidi kim pravashet kim asit vrijet kim." And Krishna, in his reply, tells Arjuna that the outside world makes its onslaught into our mind through our senses, and we respond accordingly. We respond to our mind through the positivity or the negativity of the emotional state that is forever whirling around in the mind. And the person who's situated in the self does not allow this whirling engine to get engaged to the idea of life. Rather, it is the permanent idea of the self which engages with the worries, with all the beautiful stuff that massages us, with all the stuff of the material world, the good and the bad. It is registered not in the mind, but rather in the permanent seat of consciousness. And that is a bit far-fetched to think. And the shloka is Prajahati yada kaman sarvatpat manogatan atmanyavatmana tusht sthit pragyasya dochyate. What it means is that this person is not given to desiring, rather he is able to check, or she is able to check when there is an onslaught of a desire, an onslaught of a thought, positive or negative, striking into the mind. It is the permanent self which has been awakened, which is able to absorb this fusillade, this brunt of what's happening outside. And the mind is not perturbed thereafter. Sthit pragyasya dochyate. This person is known to be seated on the permanent self. And therefore, if there is a reason for joy and exuberance, exhilaration, the person is not really looking forward to it. And if there is a reason for sorrow, for rejection, for the negativities, for death, for disease, well, the person is not troubled in the midst of these circumstances. Dukheshu dugammana sukheshu vigat spraha. And this person is weaned away from attachment, lust, fear, anger, all the emotional states. Emotion is not something which is static, it is a dynamic state. It's got a spectrum of events unfolding, and there are varying degrees of intensity to the emotion. It's a vitaragavaya krodh sthidhir munurichyate. And when you're weaned away from the negatives and the positives can be when the mind is massaged with the idea of lust, or with the idea of comfort, with the idea of complacency, the positive aspect of the same duality. The yogi is seated in the permanent self, and therefore outright rejects this phantasmagoria of existence. Is there really a way to discover this permanent self? What is the basis of the permanency that is this principle which is being reiterated time and again in the Bhagavad Gita? Where is it referred to, this idea of the permanent self? This mighty ocean whose tiny drop within us represents our soul, the Atma. And how do we come to terms to understanding it? This mighty ocean is fed by many rivers of disturbance, of emotions, of thrills, of ideas, of desires. But like the ocean, its level would have to remain uniform. Now, if the mind can be driven to the depth of the self, then all the agitation happening outside, if it leads into our mind, would not trouble it. Rather, the mind would remain peaceful and settled like the deep ocean. Apurimanam achalam pratishtam samudravapi pravishanti advat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sashantinapnopi na kama kami. The mind is in peace and not agitated through action, through thinking, through getting worked up. This body is supposed to have a soul, but there are many wise people who say that it is rather the soul, the permanent truth, which has the body. And there is a very beautiful shlok regarding this. Antavant ime deha nirasyukta sharirana anashino apramayes tasmad yuddhavas bharat. What it means is antavant ime deha. This these material entities have a shelf life, have a limited shelf life. Dehanam, material bodies or these entities, they have a limited shelf life. Nitya sukto sharirana. Nit is a permanent station, the isness of permanency. It is known as the permanent station of this isness, this beingness. And that is the real body in which the wise man was referring to, the soul having the body. So the soul is embodied in the material entities, and it is indestructible, anashino, cannot be destroyed. Apramayesya, which cannot be measured, it is immeasurable, it is infinite. It is so infinite that the same atoms which exist inside our bodies would be found somewhere in some remote galaxy in this universe. There's a universality to the atoms and the subatomic arena of existence. The atoms are, as you must be remembering from physics, the building blocks of all the material. There's a nucleus which has got protons and neutrons, and to equal the charge, the positive charge of the protons, there's a negative charge of the electrons. And the nucleus, which contains these protons and neutrons, contain the entire mass of the atom. And there's a very tiny space which is separated by a very relatively huge space where the electrons exist in the quanta. And these electrons, they interact with the electrons of other atoms, and through different bondings the molecules are formed. And the nucleus does not participate in the bonding. It rather is responsible to maintain the integrity of the atom unless there is very high ambient temperature, like it happens in the stars and the sun. The atomic structure, the character and the nature of the atom is preserved. However, in the sun and the stars, the nuclei, they fuse together, the atoms become diffusion, and with the release of huge amounts of energy, and there's a constant flow of supply of energy to the outside planetary systems from the suns. And these neutrons and these protons, they're whirling at tremendous amount of speeds to the tune of 500 kilometers per second, and they maintain a dynamic equilibrium within the atom. And all this is happening with the dynamism of interplay of matter and energy, and the organic life, as we know, on this tiny shell upon the earth, the biosphere. It is sustaining out of what is taking place at this level of the subatomic realm. There are particles that exist for a minuscule of a microsecond, for a fraction of a thousandth of a second. They come and they go, and these blips of the presence of these subatomic particles register in the big broad world as material entities. And this is happening everywhere, unknown to us, unseen by us. And it is happening through an intelligence which is innate, which is the isness to the material entities, as Krishna was saying, and which the Nitya Asya Ukta Sharirana happens to be situated. Now, this principle, this eternal principle, is not, it does not get destroyed by anything. And it is all pervading. Avinashi tu tattidiyena sarvam vidam tatam vinasham avasyas nakasit katam marasi. There is a shlok which basically stating the indestructibility of the permanence principle. न जायते म्रियते न कदाचि न भूत्वा भविता नायं भूत्वा भविता व न भूयाजो नित्य शाश्वत पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. It is not born, it is not born, it does not die. न जायते म्रियते न कदाचि, ever. नायं भूत्वा भविता व न भूया. It does not have a past tense or a future tense or the middle. It does not evolve, this permanent principle. Ajo nitya shashvatva purano. Since times immemorial has it been understood. And nahanyate hanyamane sharire. And in the material body it is not destroyed. And there is another very beautiful shlok which describes, basically it is all poetry. Now there is some philosophy, it is all poetry, so I am trying to inspire you to like, appreciate the poetry part. Vasanshi jirnani yata vihaya. Vasanshi, this word comes, the root is vastra, clothes, jirnani, and they become tattered. Yatha vihaya, as vihaya, they're given up when they're tattered, the clothes. Namani grahanati naro prani, and the people, they don new garments. Namani grahanati naro prani. Tata sharirani vihaya jirna. And when the body becomes non-viable for existence, it gets wounded or it gets diseased or becomes old, it is given up. Nanyati sanyati namani dehi. And that permanent self, it slips on new garments. And the principle of the permanent self will be reiterated time and again as we go more into the nitty-gritties of the chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. I hope my talk was interesting, and I wonder if you will one day begin to study the Bhagavad Gita and appreciate its poetry and its philosophy and its significance pertaining to the present situation. So much more the reason for you to do it now. See you on to my next video. Bye.